Let me start with a simple question. Have you ever argued with someone you love, only to realize later that the argument wasn't really about the topic at all? Maybe it started about dishes, or time, or plans, but suddenly it turned into something much bigger. If yes, then this video is for you. Today, we're talking about one major mindset mistake that silently destroys healthy communication and turns every disagreement into a battle. Most people are unaware they're doing it. But once you recognize it and fix it, your arguments will start becoming productive instead of painful. So what is this mindset mistake? It's the mindset of winning the argument instead of understanding the person. Most couples don't argue to fix the issue. They argue to protect their ego. They argue to prove a point. They argue to make sure they don't lose. And when the goal becomes winning, the relationship automatically loses. Think about it. If your partner feels unheard, misunderstood, or disrespected, even if you are technically right, the relationship still suffers. This mistake happens because most people enter arguments with emotional defenses already raised. They feel attacked. They feel judged. And instead of listening, they start preparing their response. Not to connect. Not to find peace. But to defend themselves. So why does this happen? There are three main reasons. First, fear of being wrong. Fear of being wrong is one of the biggest emotional triggers in arguments. For many people, admitting a mistake feels like admitting they are not good enough, smart enough, or worthy of respect. So instead of accepting the possibility of being wrong, they fight harder to protect their image. This fear often comes from the belief that being right equals being strong. When someone feels challenged, their brain treats it as an attack, even if the conversation is harmless. Their instinct becomes defending their position, not solving the issue. Sometimes this fear is connected to past experiences. Maybe they grew up in an environment where making mistakes led to judgment, punishment, or embarrassment. In those situations, being wrong was not just a small error, it was something to fear. When a person carries that emotional memory into a relationship, they respond to disagreements with defensiveness. Not because the partner is wrong, but because the brain is trying to avoid old emotional pain. Fear of being wrong can also be tied to ego. The ego wants to feel in control, respected, and superior. So when challenged, it reacts with arguments, sarcasm, or stubbornness, just to avoid looking weak or uncertain. Some people fear being wrong because it feels like losing power in the relationship. They may think that if they admit fault once, their partner will use it against them in the future. So they avoid responsibility to protect themselves. This mindset closes the door to healthy communication because it stops learning. When someone refuses to accept the possibility of being wrong, they also refuse growth, empathy, and compromise. This turns every argument into a competition rather than teamwork. Over time, fear of being wrong creates emotional distance. The partner feels unheard, dismissed, or invalidated. What began as a simple disagreement becomes a pattern of conflict, frustration, and resentment. Understanding this pattern is important because healing starts with awareness. Recognizing that fear, not logic, is driving the reaction gives space to change the way you respond in arguments. Instead of focusing on being right, try focusing on being open. There is strength in listening. There is power in learning. Relationships grow when both people allow space for imperfection and honesty rather than perfection and defense. When you let go of the fear of being wrong, arguments stop being battles and start becoming meaningful conversations. And in those conversations, love has room to grow. Second, past experiences and childhood patterns. Our approach to arguments is often shaped long before we enter adulthood. The way we were spoken to, corrected, or ignored as children creates emotional templates that follow us into relationships. These early experiences quietly influence how we react during conflict. If you grew up in a household where speaking up led to punishment, yelling, or rejection, your nervous system learned that disagreement is unsafe. So as an adult, any sign of confrontation can trigger anxiety, even when the conversation is calm and respectful. For some people, arguments were the only time anyone paid attention. Maybe love felt inconsistent, and conflict became a way to finally be noticed or taken seriously. In that case, fighting becomes a familiar emotional pattern, not because it feels good, but because it feels normal. Others learned that staying silent was the only way to avoid chaos. If speaking your truth as a child resulted in tension, you may now shut down, go quiet, or withdraw during arguments. This isn't avoidance. It's a survival response your brain built to protect you. When disagreements were unpredictable or emotionally explosive in childhood, your body learned to treat conflict like danger. So in adulthood, even small misunderstandings can trigger fight, flight, or freeze reactions before your logical mind gets a chance to think. This automatic reaction can look like anger, defensiveness, impatience, or shutting down. The behavior is not about the current partner or situation. It is a leftover response from a time when arguing genuinely felt threatening. Some childhood environments also taught that vulnerability is unsafe. If expressing feelings led to teasing or rejection, you may now struggle to share emotions openly. Instead, you may mask hurt with blame or frustration because emotional honesty feels risky. These patterns create conflict cycles in relationships. One partner may chase connection with intensity, while the other pulls away to feel safe. Without awareness, both sides feel misunderstood, even though both are protecting old emotional wounds. The key to breaking these patterns is recognizing them. When you understand that your reaction is based on an outdated emotional program, you create room to choose a new way of responding. Awareness becomes the first step toward change. Healing doesn't mean blaming your past. It means understanding how your upbringing shaped you and learning to communicate in healthier ways. You are not stuck with the patterns you grew up with. You can create new ones. When arguments stop triggering survival mode, relationships become safer. Conversations become easier. And emotional connection becomes something you don't have to fight for or hide from. Your past may have taught you how to survive conflict, but your present can teach you how to build connection. The moment you realize you are no longer in danger is the moment you start communicating with clarity instead of fear. Third, lack of emotional skills. Many people struggle in arguments not because they don't care, but because they never learn how to communicate their emotions in a healthy way. Emotional skills are not automatic. They are learned, practiced, and developed over time. If no one taught you how to express yourself calmly, it's natural to feel overwhelmed during conflict. In many homes, emotional expression wasn't encouraged. Some families avoided feelings altogether, while others communicated only through anger or silence. Because of that, emotional regulation can feel unfamiliar or uncomfortable as an adult. When someone lacks emotional skills, feelings like frustration, sadness, or insecurity often come out as irritation, blame, or defensiveness. It's not intentional. It's simply the only way the person knows how to communicate those deeper feelings. Some people struggle because they don't know how to identify their emotions. They feel something intense, but they cannot name whether it is disappointment, fear, or loneliness. Without clarity, their response becomes reactive instead of thoughtful. Listening is another emotional skill many people never learned. Instead of hearing their partner's point of view, they interrupt, defend, or shut down. They are focused on their own emotional reaction rather than the message being shared. Another common skill gap is emotional regulation. When someone feels triggered, their body reacts before their mind can process. Heart rate increases, tone becomes sharper, and the argument escalates quickly. Without the ability to regulate emotions, anger becomes the default response. Some people also struggle with empathy. Not because they don't care, but because they were never shown how to step into someone else's perspective. Empathy requires slowing down and considering how the other person feels, which can be difficult when emotions are strong. Boundaries are another missing skill for many people. Without knowing how to set or respect boundaries, conversations can become overwhelming, personal, or chaotic. Healthy conflict requires knowing where emotional lines exist and honoring them. The good news is that emotional skills are not fixed. They can be learned at any age. With awareness, patience, and practice, anyone can improve how they communicate during disagreements. Developing emotional skills starts with self-awareness. When you understand your emotional triggers, communication becomes intentional instead of reactive. You respond thoughtfully rather than automatically. Emotional maturity includes listening, honesty, patience, and mutual respect. It means being able to pause, reflect, and speak without hurting the person you love. It turns conflict into connection rather than chaos. When emotional skills grow, arguments stop feeling like battles. They become opportunities for understanding and closeness. The relationship becomes stronger because both partners know how to express themselves without tearing each other down. Now here is the truth most people never realize. Your partner isn't your enemy. The problem is the enemy. You are on the same team, trying to solve it. When you shift from me versus you to us versus the problem, the energy of the argument changes instantly. So now let's talk about the solution. How do you fix this mindset mistake? Step 1. Pause before reacting. When emotions rise, logic disappears. Take 5 to 10 seconds to breathe and calm the emotional reflex. Step 2. Identify your goal. Ask yourself silently, do I want to be right, or do I want us to understand each other? This single question can stop the argument from turning toxic. Step 3. Listen without interrupting. Most arguments escalate because both people want to speak and no one wants to hear. Try listening fully. Not to reply, but to understand. Step 4. Validate feelings, even if you disagree with the content. For example, you can say, I understand you feel unheard, or I can see why this bothers you. Validation doesn't mean you agree. It means you respect their emotions. Step 5. Respond with I statements instead of you statements. Say, I feel hurt when, instead of, you always do this. You statements trigger defense. I statements open connection. Step 6. Look for the real issue. Sometimes arguments are only surface expressions of deeper emotional needs like lack of attention, respect, time, affection, or security. The real issue is almost never the first thing said. Step 7. Find a solution together. Instead of competing, collaborate. Instead of fighting for your point, search for a middle ground where both people feel seen, valued, and understood. Remember, love is not proved by winning arguments. Love is proved by how gently you treat each other during difficult conversations. Arguments are not signs of a failing relationship. They are opportunities to grow together, understand each other better, and strengthen emotional connection. But only if the mindset is right. So let's recap. The one mindset mistake that kills relationship arguments is arguing to win instead of arguing to understand. Healing starts when you shift from I need to defend myself to we need to figure this out together. In the end, relationships are not about proving who is smarter, louder, or more correct. They are about connection. They are about support. They are about building a safe space where both people can express themselves without fear. If you want a healthy relationship, start treating arguments not as wars, but as conversations. Not as threats, but as opportunities. Not as competitions, but as bridges. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, make sure to apply at least one step in your next difficult conversation. Small changes create powerful results. And remember, in love, the goal is not to win. The goal is to understand.